has his own business now in performance management, I think, performance management and coaching. And he's also a board member for the Humane Society. He's been a board member at Spark Angel Network. He's been a mentor. He helps a lot of our clients. If we say, Frank, we just need some help for somebody, whether it be a connection to financing, a connection to investing, angel investing, or just really connections. Frank is the guy that I call, and Frank is someone who helps me a lot. And he has helped us by actually finding all the guest speakers for today. Frank was very much involved in sales and marketing and merchandising himself, and so who better than your Rolodex, Frank? Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you. Thank you, Town of Whitby, as well, and thanks for coming out this morning. I was looking at the weather to make sure that it didn't snow this morning. Before I read Rick's bio, the reason I wanted to suggest that Rick is here, we also have our February speaker here, we have March speaker here in the room as well. Rick is in the space of home health care, and there was one is in the room today that said, hey, do you think that Rick can meet with me just to give me some advice? And he spent hours with two folks from Durham region. He even drove all the way from Oakville to meet with these people. So it was only natural that when we're looking for people to come out and share, that Rick was on the list. So if you allow me, it's my pleasure to read Rick's bio. Rick Menassa brings 30 years of business development experience working for global and Canadian technology companies including Motorola, Rogers, Ingram, Micro, Xerox, and TELUS. As a visionary entrepreneur, he set up portable office solutions to develop and sell the earliest models of data over cellular products in Canada, and later moved to the UK to lead the expansion of applied innovations across Europe, closing 5 million sales in the first year. Where were you when I was setting up my BlackBerry to iPhone the last 2 weeks? I didn't even know. He is the president currently. Do I have to use this? He is the president and co-founder of iCare Home Health, a boutique home care company serving Halton, Peel, and the GTA region that assists Canadians recovering from medical procedures or simply opting to age at their own home. Rick has won several President Club awards for exceeding sales targets, and he reminds his friends all the time. He was also the winner of the Volunteer Year category at the Mississauga Board of Trade for a Business Excellence Award, and iCare Home Health Care was also nominated for Business Excellence by the Oakville Chamber of Commerce. Making a difference is part of his DNA. Rick serves as chair of the board of directors for the Seniors Life Enhancement Centers, is a board member with the Brain Injury Society of Toronto. He's the chair of the Health and Wellness Committee at the Mississauga Board of Trade, member of the Health and Wellness Committee, Burlington Chamber of Commerce. He supports 5 local hospitals and Alzheimer's societies in both Halton and Peel through Director Nations, as well as supporting fundraising activities. As a cyclist, he participates in fundraising rides, including the Heart and Stroke annual ride for Heart and several others. And somewhere, apparently, he finds time to sell. So please, help me all the way from Oakville to give Rick Menassa a big Durham region welcome. It's a little hot in these lights.
morning. How many saw this video before? 51 million people did. You know why? Because it resonates with everybody that everybody was born a salesperson. We all try to sell our parents or somebody on something we want, and we still do. Men try to sell their wives on why they should buy that extra set of rims, and wives will try to kind of justify why we should buy whatever it is we need to buy. So before we start, let's just kind of get a show of hands. How many people here work in a single person environment, as in like a insurance sales rep, car sales rep? Okay. How many in organizations of 1 to 10? Okay. And the rest are, let's say 50 plus? Okay. All right. How many are in the sales capacity? Very nice. Okay. So that's me. My name is Menassa. And when I was a kid, somebody told me I should go and work in sales. And I thought, nah, that's kind of too yucky. Thinking of sales, I'm thinking of car salespeople, used car salesmen. And that to me just did not bode well, so I went to banking. I like the idea of working in a glass tower with a pinstripe suit, which I did. My first job was with Bank of America, Canada. And I was down at the Royal Bank Plaza. And it was exactly what I envisioned. I got my navy blue pinstripe suit, and I'd go every day and join the hordes of the Wall Street kind of image in my own head, except that the paycheck that came at the end of the day, it didn't look like Wall Street. It looked more like Kmart. So one day, after 3 promotions in 4 years, I was out on Bay Street, and I saw a nice car, and I'm a car guy, and I was a kid, and I thought, I gotta go back and work out how many raises do I need to get to be able to afford this car. So I go back to my desk, and I do some calculations really quickly, and the answer was not very good. So I started to get these migraines going to work, because I realized I don't fit there. I don't want to be at this desk anymore. And long story short, one day I walked out and I quit with no plan. And the plan was, I don't belong there, I gotta find out where I belong. And I was actually sitting at my home one day, and I used to walk down Young Street, going to stores, going to places, and just get inspired. Look at people, look at products, and see, I want to do this, I want to do that, sell coffee, whatever, and nothing at all. And sure enough, I went to a franchise show, and my first business was I picked up these 3 coffee machines at the time. This is way before Starbucks, way before everybody else. And they were these desktop machines that had a roll of paper like toilet paper. And you put the coin in, and it would actually grind the beans, and it would just brew the cup, and then it would just, that roll of paper kind of rolls on, takes the grind away, and a new set of grind was on, and I was kind of lucky. I started to kind of go out, try to sell this to companies in the first Canadian place, and there was a company called Inco, for the people who are old enough to remember Inco, who said, you know what, we like this. We'll take 3. Great. And I put them in 3 staff lunches on 3 floors, and oops, sorry. And I started to go at 6 in the morning to refill my machine with beans and put some sugar and whatever, and leave. And in 1 hour a day, I was making as much money I was making at the bank per year. This is a good gig. And I'd go back to bed, literally, working 1 hour a day. And I thought, okay, well, this is enough. What's next now? So more of these machines or what? And but part of me liked technology. And I got this phone call, and somebody said, we heard about you from friends. We're going to be launching a product. And this will allow people to talk and call from their cars. It's going to be called the cellular phone. The year's 1985. And the company was Motorola, and the phone was $7,000. And it was a clunker. It was a status symbol. And I said, would you like to come and talk to us? And I said, sure. So I had nothing else to do. So I went down and I met with the folks in Motorola at Cellular in Mississauga. Long story short, I thought, I like this, I'm going to do this. And I started to sell phones, and of course at the time, I started to see that everybody is my colleagues are kind of going to the street, targeting people with Jaguars and Mercedes and trying to convince them to buy this phone. Now with my brain, I just don't think like that. I thought, why are we selling these one at a time? Why don't we go to the source and put them in the cars before they come out of the factory? So my first big deal was going to Porsche, Audi, and over a year I negotiated putting Motorola phones in the armrest of the 911, and back then the top of the line Audi, which is now the A8. And of course this was not something that was done locally, so all of a sudden I'm involved in Motorola USA and Audi Porsche in Germany, and I had no idea what I'm doing. All I knew is I just had the vision for this. And Tony Schmattermeyer, who is now passed away, was the vice president of accessories for Audi Porsche. Just loved my idea, because my pitch was, you're competing with Mercedes and BMW. What makes you different? Well, there's the heritage. Well, they have heritage. What else makes you different? And of course, at the end of the day, the status symbol was the cell phone at the time. Now, by the way, the status symbol is not to have a cell phone. I don't know if you know that. So, as you see, I don't have any status. Still carry one. So that kind of got me to start to think way back then about personal branding. Why me? Why do people deal with me? And I started to realize that as much as we all look at brands and we want to buy brands, before people do anything with us, they buy us. And very few people have that concept. Very few actually fathom the depth of that concept. Before you shake a hand, and in today's technology, at least with me, I'm that kind of person. I'll check you out. And I'll find out as much as I can about you to figure out if I have time for you. Because my time is really tight. So personal brand is something I started to develop a long time ago. And it started to work for me like a charm. We know that people buy from people they like. You can have the best price, and Frank can have the best price, and between the two of us, if everything is equal, they're going to buy from the person that they like, right? So what makes a brand, right? Number one, everybody has probably some kind of an online presence. We were just talking about that. So we're talking about websites for companies. How about your own virtual, visual website? I don't have my own personal website, but everything you do on the internet is your website. When you make a comment on Twitter, you're building a website. When you're making a comment on Facebook or putting a picture up on LinkedIn, that's part of your website. Because if you Google me right now, you're going to see about 3 pages of me. Right? And it's going to say a story of some sort. And I can guarantee you there'll be no pictures of me dancing somewhere on a table or sitting by a pool somewhere with a bottle of beer. Because at the end of the day, I got a brand and I'm managing that brand. Right? So that's one of the first things that kind of resonated with me, is to kind of build my brand. My brand is, and your brand is, everything that you are. It's the way you dress. It's your taste in fashion. It is the pattern that you kind of are known for. If you got the busy pattern or the plain pattern. It is the way you choose your accessories, to what you drive, okay, to your everything else you can think about. That becomes your brand. The tone of your voice, the speed of your voice, it becomes your brand. So that when you're not in the room and people say, John Smith, there's an image that pops up that becomes your brand, right? The second thing I learned is to capitalize on my strength. A lot of us, we kind of look at life, or at least some people do, and kind of wonder, what's my differentiator? What makes me different from the other guy? Well, I have this kind of strength. I can speak 4 languages, or I can do this. Well, for me, my strengths are multiple, and we all have negatives, but my strengths are multiple. You know, I come from a different background, culture-wise. I've traveled a lot. I appreciate different things. I can speak about different topics. So, talking about strength, if you understand your strength and you build on your strength, you'll find that you're more attractive to people. People want to talk to you. Maybe not about everything, but they want to talk to you at least about the 2 or 3 things that you're good at. I know Frank, now if I want to talk about investing, well, Frank is very well plugged in between Spark Angels and other items. If I want to talk about media or magazines, that's his background. He knows that stuff in his sleep. Why should I go to somebody else? So that's his strength. So know your strength, promote your strength, and have people look at you as the kind of person that they can think about when this is what kind of topic they want to discuss with you. Tap into your values. So I have my values. I come from a Christian background. I kind of integrate this in my business in terms of integrity and the way we handle things. Frank mentioned I did some business in Europe, and I have my own theories when I landed in London, England, and I set up an office there. And then I had to set up operations in France and Germany and Spain and every other European country. And I used to have this kind of joking kind of thing about different cultures in Europe. You know, if everybody's nice until a deal goes sideways. And that's when you see the real person, right? In my world, you could differ. The Germans will honor their word with a very terse, kind of conservative thing. The French will break into a temper tantrum trying to kind of explain to you why they cannot honor this anymore. The English will politely try to weasel out of it. And the Spanish will be close down to kind of crying about, like, can you give me a break kind of thing because I'm a small guy, and so on. So your values, your personal values, is something you want to integrate into your work values because it becomes part of your brand. It becomes who you are. And when people know you for your values and they like your values, they want to work with you and buy from you. Pursue your passions. I'm a very passionate guy. I love my wine. I used to like some of my shoes. The shoe I'm wearing right now, I got this from Rome when I was in Italy, and I saw this at Harry Rosen here before I left, and they were like a lot of money here, and we arrive in Venice, sorry, not Venice, Florence, and I see them right in front of me in the hotel, and the store is closed. And every morning we left from 8 in the morning, came back at 1 in the morning, and that store is always closed. It's never open when we get there. And we left Florence, and I was so sad I couldn't grab these shoes. And went to the Amalfi Coast. I know it sounds like a woman. So the shoes are great. So anyway, we go down to the Amalfi Coast while, not there, and then back to Rome, and we're busy, and for a whole month, these shoes chased me everywhere, and I can't buy them. And the night before we left Italy, we're walking away, and the stores are closing, and I see them again. And I go underneath the door, there are these shutters, and the guy comes screaming, "Hey, Fermi, we're closed, we're closed." I said, "No, you're not. I'm taking these shoes with me." So this is kind of passion. If you have passion for something, you want to chase that, and you want to bring it across. You want to have people actually see your passion, because people will want to buy, will want to deal with you when they see that you're passionate about what you're selling. Defining your purpose is very important. If you wake up in the morning I always say, when I wake up in the morning, and if I don't like what I'm doing, then I should stay in bed. That's something I learned. Life is too short. So define your purpose, find out what it is, and pursue that. The more you pursue that, the more you will build your own kind of character, the more kind of brand that will resonate with people. Now, what makes you different? What's your differentiator? Again, talking about different folks here, we're all different. What makes you different? So, as I said before, I'm really busy. Now, being an ex-salesperson, when I get somebody talking to me on the phone and saying, you know what, I want to come and sell you this, I want to know that I'm going to learn something from this person, right? So I kind of put in bullet form really fast here. Be informed, right? And be informative, right? Know your stuff. I hate going to buy a car from somebody where I know more about the car than the guy who's selling me the car. Or if we're talking investment, I don't want to go and talk investment with somebody who's kind of reading for me some kind of a printout that they got from their company. Know your stuff. Teach me something I don't know. The old Gordon Gekko. It's my birthday. Tell me something I don't know, right? Be precise, right? Don't talk in vague terms. So I usually will have my information and I will quantify them in numbers and keep it brief because most people are busy. Be decisive. When it's time to close the deal, close the deal. Don't drag it on, right? Not too early. Forget all the cliches, the ABC, always be closing. There's a time for everything. But be decisive. When it's time to close, close. And be competitive. I've never sold anything based on price. I've always sold based on value. And I've always gotten top dollars for what I sell. So be competitive, and competition or being competitive is not based on price. It's on the value that you deliver to the client. And the last thing I have here is to listen. You gotta listen. I find that a lot of people, listening is actually an art. I learned this at an old age. Most people don't listen. You'd be telling them something and they're just too busy thinking of how they're gonna answer what you're saying with what they know, not really with what I'm saying. So the next thing is, are you answering a question nobody asked? And the answer to that can be good and bad, right? iCare Home Health. So a few years ago, 5 years ago, I went on 2 trips. I won President Club Award at TELUS for closing with one of the largest private deals, $12 million, with one of the pop bottlers. And the trip was to Dubai. And we stayed, the way TELUS does things, they take people to the best places in whatever country or city we go to. So when people went to Italy, everybody had their own Ferrari. It was actually, it so happened that
it was this big though, right?
No, it was an actual Ferrari with its own driver. Yeah, and just so happened there was a Global Mail driver, a photographer in Rome at the time, and even Italians don't see a train of Ferraris the way TELUS had it that evening, going to the evening gala for dinner. So that was a shot that was on the front page of the Global Mail here in Canada as to the way TELUS treats its top people. For me, when I was in Dubai, we had dinner at the hotel that looks like a sail, which is the only 7-star hotel in the world. And needless to say, the glitz was beyond comprehension. The theme of the trip was gold. So every day, every morning, we got a gold gift in our room for the people that stayed. So gold cufflinks, gold whatever, depending on whatever the day was. So that was really, really great. Back to that trip, I come back here, and I had volunteered on a trip with World Mission. And I went with a Toronto-based church to Lebanon, where I worked in a refugee camp. So now we have the Syrian refugees here. Well, Lebanon had them now for a number of years, and they have 2 million of them. We're kind of is trying to cope with 25,000. They got 2 million of them in tents. And the trip was to go and distribute food and clothing and blankets among the tents. And in Lebanon, they do have snow, so they actually had snow on the tents, and this was not a weekend thing. This is how they lived. And I came back, and one of the things that kind of really challenged me was, what do I want to do with my life? I just did two things back to back. Most expensive, richest thing, and then I went and I saw people who really own nothing, and they just want to live. Food is a luxury. And I came back and thought, okay, I want to change my life. I want to give back. And one of the great things we have in this country is that we can recreate ourselves at any point of time if we choose to. And very few people know that. You can actually recreate yourself at any moment if you choose to. I thought, okay, I want to give back. It's going to be kids or seniors. And with my buddies, we go back 25, 30 years. Our conversation over the years have changed from, going clubbing and dating to finding a good crib. And now we're talking about how our joints are kind of starting to hurt and bladders and do we know a good nursing home for our parents? So okay, seniors. My own mother's aging, and I don't like what I see out there. My mother called me once, and she was crying. She said, "Why don't you promise me you're never going to put me in a place like this?" And I said, "Well, it's too early. Promise me." "Okay, I promise." So sure enough, I set up a company, and I went and I looked at franchises. I don't know, does anybody own a franchise here? Okay. So nothing against franchises. I didn't like what I saw. I found that it was very limited for my kind of creativity. I thought I set up my own brand. And that was the birth of iCare Home Health. And I went back to school and I learned, I got certified, and I still go back to Brock University to get specifically on brain injury care. So we do more complex care now than just aging. And we set up iCare Home Health. And back to being differentiator. Question was, why would anybody deal with us? We gotta be different. So initial setup for our agency was we provide nurse care, we provide companion care. Most franchises do the same. However, after that we said, okay, we're going to go to full care. We'll provide nursing care, so we'll provide full medical. And then as I volunteered on the Brain Injury Society, I realized, you know what, we're going to even do complex care. So now we offer more complex spinal and brain injury care. We set up iCare Navigator, so back to the question nobody asked. Right? And Navigator was in response to, well, as we acquire more clients, a lot of clients say, you know what, my mom or dad need this thing, and the doctor is not giving us the right answer, or you get people who say, well, I'm being told I have to amputate my leg, and I have to amputate so high up, I won't be able to wear prosthesis anymore. Can you get me a second opinion? We have people like the Premier of New Brunswick who basically had to fly to the US because he doesn't want to wait for 9 months for an operation here. So now we have that kind of offer. Yeah, if you want to pay $25,000, $35,000, we'll fly down the States and you get an operation done in a weekend instead of waiting for 9 months, right? But we found that a lot of the people that call do not really want to pay for the service. So we're answering a question that maybe some people ask but don't really want to know the answer because they're not prepared to answer that question. However, Navigator evolved because now we offer expert opinion in court of law on health-related files. And we charge for that. We had the last lawsuit, we gave an opinion on $16 million where we gave an opinion on the quality of care that will be provided. And it's a very unique offering for our agency that I don't know too many agencies that do right now. So we get calls from a lot of the biggest law firms. We don't deal with any lawyers that you would see on the back of a bus or on TV. But 4 or 5 of the top law firms deal with us when it comes to Navigator and expert opinion. Another thing that we set up, and we're still setting up right now, is our Health Espresso app. None of our competitors have an app, And we thought, well, I come from a technology background. Again, out of a need, I have a growing number of clients where the kids being the boomers, don't live here anymore. They move to Europe or the US, and basically they can't monitor their parents. We monitor the parents. We report to the parents. Well, what if they can actually monitor the parents from anywhere in the world? So now we're setting up Health Espresso with Sheridan College Center for Elder Research. We got some funding from the government, the National Research Council of Canada, and we have more interest in it now from Halton Health, who want to try this as a pilot for early discharge patients, where they can actually do remote monitoring by letting people go home early so they can free the bed. As we know, there's very limited supply of beds. So now we can actually let people go home, and we can actually monitor them while they're at home at $500 a day, for example, of care at home, instead of $1,700 or $2,000 a day in a hospital bed. So this is something else that we tried. Go for the steak. Let others fight for the crumbs. So I'm going to talk about my deal with Coca-Cola. When I was at TELUS, that big deal I did, $12 million, my colleagues and our quotas were like in the $300,000 to $400,000 a year. That was kind of deals that we would bring in. And I went in to Coca-Cola, which was assigned to me, and Coca-Cola really did not want to deal with TELUS. Rogers and Bell were their biggest suppliers for a lot of good reasons. And the people in procurement said, you're number 3, give us your best price. And back to, sometimes you can change the seats around the table, where instead of sitting in the far end, you can be in the center by being the subject matter expert. And long story short, I said, well, let's put price aside. Why don't we look at how we can actually change the way you do business to shave money out of your operation, leveraging wireless products. And by saying that, I changed the conversation from a commodity to a value-add system. And what happened for the year and a half after that is I traveled across the country. I visited every Coca-Cola plant. I sat with the drivers, I sat with the procurement people, and the executive team knew me by name. And back to tell me something I don't know. What I gathered when I went back and I sat in front of the president and his team and gave him, here's what I found out. They already know every bottling operation ran different from the one in another province. And here's how much this is costing you. And here's how we can change this leveraging technology. And you can shave so much of your manual setup. And maybe we'll reduce some of your labor by that much. And this is going to cost you $12 million, but will save $20 million out of your operation. And that was a deal changer. All of a sudden, I'm not talking how much is a BlackBerry anymore and how much is the minute or 1 megabyte of data. I'm part of the business now. Right? The Rogers and Bell guys, and one of them was actually a very good friend of mine, had no idea what's going on. So when we started, and then I went back to procurement not to leave them out, and I said, you know what? Why don't you go for an RFP? And with an RFP, something I learned at Xerox is the second bullet up here is something called competitive lockout. Insert, if you get close enough in an RFP to the people that you're working with, and you put in something that you're selling that nobody else is. Well, when the RFP goes out and they have to submit their responses, they can't meet the RFP requirements. Okay? that's exactly what happened. So we went out, and I encouraged Coca-Cola to go for an RFP, and they did. And I didn't help them write it, but I kind of inspired them with some things that the executive team wanted now that were not part of the original ask. And with that, we were the only people left at the table. And we got that deal. $12 million, way different from where we started. Now, it took some work. And this doesn't come by being nice and just taking people out for lunch. As a matter of fact, I gotta give it to these guys. They don't accept any, not even a coffee, until you're actually doing business with them. So very much like a Walmart kind of setup. We don't take any gifts. And if you do give them a Christmas gift, they give it to the staff to kind of distribute among themselves. So relationship selling, build the relationship, take the time to build the relationship before you actually go and pitch what you have. Understand the person we're dealing with, understand what their priorities are, and don't ask them questions about what keeps you up at night because that's such a cliche. Don't ask them what are your goals because that's probably in the annual report. That means you didn't do your homework, right? So learn their annual report, learn their website, learn about their company. So when you ask them questions that are not readily available in public. That's relationship selling. Competitive lockout, understand your own product and understand your competitor and understand what makes you different and why you. And if you don't have one, come up with one. If you want to make big money, that's how it's going to be. Change the play rules. There's no rule against changing the rule. There's no rule again, and nobody gets fired for bringing the business in. No matter what industry you work in, nobody gets fired for bringing the business in. And the last thing I mentioned there is like, how do you spend your time? You are what you think, you are what you watch, you are what you say. So I might be obsessed or passionate, you call it what you want to call it. I love what I do. So I'm constantly looking at everything around everything that I do. I keep one eye on what's at hand and one eye on the big picture, right? So in my business, well, I got a day-to-day operation. We have a growing number of clients and they have individual needs, and iCare stands for individualized care. I individualize my care around every specific client. We don't have a sandbox to fit people in. We build the sandbox around every client. With that, it's a lot more intense operation. We go down to like even matching the kind of caregiver that goes to the client. We don't just throw bodies at people and hope they fit. We actually go and look if it's a language or a cultural thing. We even go that far. So that's my day-to-day stuff. And of course, you gotta hire, we don't fire. We've hired well that we don't fire. I got to improve my day-to-day equipment and machines and whatever, systems. But at the same time, I got to know what's going on in the industry. We have a new health minister, Eric Hoskins, who is changing things from Deb Matthews. He has a new paper called Patient First. And that new paper is changing the way the hospitals do business. They are taking away funding from hospitals and they're sending it to home care. Am I being positioned as a company to benefit from that change? Public system is not giving, it's unsustainable. I have news for you. If you're planning to retire, counting on the public system, think again. So now I know the public-private hybrid system is coming, and we need to be positioned to take advantage of that and be one of the players. Do I want a franchise or not franchise? We've had people now, 3 people in 2 years approach us for franchise. And we said no, at least for now, the values, we care about our values. So what do we want to do? Do we want to be the whole trend for Walmart? Both are good companies, both are good models. You can't frown on anything. So whatever you sell, it has its own market. However, be the best you can be in that market. Be the best you can be in that market. So we started in Oakville, and now in 4 years, just over 4 years, now we serve Mississauga, Burlington, Milton, Georgetown, this last year, 2016, we expanded to Hamilton and Toronto. And we're growing fast. Here's the catch. We don't advertise at all. It's word of mouth. It's referral business. We're very heavy online, but we don't advertise in print advertising. I don't believe in it, and thank God we don't spend money on it. We do things differently, but keep your eye on what's happening in the industry and don't get distracted. As I said before, I'm very passionate. And you find that most successful people are very passionate about what they do. Of course, Buddy here, who's no longer with us, Steve Jobs. If you look at Steve Jobs, and I'm sure everybody in the room has some kind of an Apple something. Whether it's an iPod or an iPhone or iPad or a combination of all the above, or Apple TV or whatever. iTunes. He changed our life. He changed our life. How? He's very passionate about what he does. He's a visionary. By the way, he was the son of a Syrian immigrant. So passion. Follow your passion. If you don't follow your passion, you have a job. And that's where that starts and stops, right? But if you really want to make a difference in your industry, in your own personal life, if you want to be one of the cream of the cream, the 20% that make 80% of the money versus the 80% that make 20% of the money, right? You want to follow your passion because you know what they say. If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So I average sometimes 16 to 18-hour days. And I get so upset that I feel sleepy because sleep gets in my way. I got so much I want to do. I'm so excited about what I do. And I'm sitting there and I hate it when I feel like my body's not keeping up with my head.
It's called age, right?
That's called age too, yes. And sometimes I'll do 7 days a week. And it's not because I don't call it work volume. I'm just really interested in what I do. And I do have a life. You know, we go cycling and I have my family and everything else. But it's all intertwined. And I can't shut it off, and I'm not apologetic about it. And that brings me to my last thing. It's very important that we make a difference. So I've lived in Canada all my life, and I always say, this is a great country. I've traveled everywhere. This is one of the best countries in the world. And it's not because we have great government. Matter of fact, our government sucks. How is it? I can't fathom. How is it that such a rich country has debt? Take our politicians and shoot them in the back. But what makes this country great is the people in the room here.
We have politicians in the room, right?
That's all right. So it's the people in the room. It's the individual act of Canadians everywhere that make a difference. And when we started iCare Home Health, I adopted something that I learned at TELUS. And TELUS is the largest philanthropic corporation, not in Canada, not in the US, in the world. They have an entire department that gives out $50 million a year in philanthropy. And TELUS's way of doing things resonated with me because unlike some of the big corporations where they'll sponsor some big cause, and which they do also, they will also encourage the 37,000 employees to go out on the TELUS Day of Service and make a difference in their local communities. They have 4 programs where any employee can bring in something to the forefront and say, you know what, my local high school or whatever school needs computers. I'd like 50 computers for my school. And then it's looked at, and then, yay or nay. There are so many different ways to make a difference. So at iCare Home Health, I took that, and we put 10% of our profits back in the community. Now we probably can't see from the different collage here or the drop menu on our website. But that's part of actually our promotional budget. instead of spending money on print advertising, we actually will sponsor events, whether it's at the hospitals or the 2 Alzheimer's societies in our region, because 40% of our clients suffer from Alzheimer's. So we give back to organizations that support our client base. It's a very simple idea. It's a very, very simple idea. But we realized very fast that it actually touches a lot more lives, whether it's through direct donation or co-fundraising or sponsorship of events that are just very powerful in the way it does things. And guess what? A byproduct, our brand has its own respect in our area. So when it comes to marketing and so on, we have actually, as tiny as we were, I was kind of aware from the beginning, we have a branding strategy, we have an advertising strategy, and we have a marketing strategy. They're all different. If you mix them all up into one and the same, they're not, right? So we are known now for what we do when it comes to philanthropy, as tiny as it is. And when I walk into the Oval Hospital or Trillium Hospital and I meet somebody in the hallway, like I just did yesterday, the executive team, one of the VPs there, he knows us. Right? They like our brand. The nurses like our brand because we sponsor a lot of their training. We don't get any referrals out of that, by the way. We just do it because it's the right thing to do. So making a difference is very important. Done. Any questions?
Wow. Very inspiring.
Good, yes.
Do you use or recommend any CRM to keep track of all of your clients, your leads, and your prospects? How do you manage that?
So in our industry, so the question is, do you have CRMs to keep track of the leads? In our industry, we do have, there are 2 different CRMs. We use one of them, it's actually out of the States, HomeTrack. And it handles everything from A to Z from the moment somebody makes a phone call to get the profiling, and then you're able to actually do the scheduling and assigning a caregiver to it. It has all the clients and the caregivers, and then it goes actually further down the line that the end of a billing cycle is what actually generate the billing and the payroll. Right. So it's been heaven sent, because until 2 years ago we were using Excel sheets, and that was a disaster. So
For those of the CRM, customer relationship management, the beauty about today is there's so many freebies that are available.
Yeah.
You don't have to spend $65 a pop with Microsoft Dynamics or $125 a pop for Salesforce. There are tools, right? And also, not to get sidetracked, but if it's really customizable in your industry, then you want to look at getting some government through scientific research and experimental data, shred dollars that can help you develop if you're creating something that doesn't exist or you're customizing something through a trial and error. So there's a lot of that stuff that some people are not aware of. But the beauty is that today's technology allows you to compete. I had, by the way, one of those $7,000 phones. I hate it. It was in a knapsack. But so you see where the technology came from, right?
any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned about building your personal brand,
Yes.
and that a lot of your business now is referral based.
Yes.
Can you give an idea of how your personal brand building influenced your team, so that way, as your business has been growing, that's all been coming from that referral side, and that's the reason why, because you're infiltrating that kind of personal brand into the rest of your team, and they're doing the same thing, which is obviously enabling it. So what are the differences? What have you done to allow that to happen?
So that's a great question. So it's how do you integrate your personal brand into your operation, for the lack of a better word. And if you look at our brochure and our website, you're going to see the mission, vision, values. In our brochure, we only put out values, and we have 5 values. And our 5 values actually revolve around the presentation I had here today. And they're not number 1 to 5, I always say they're number 1. So in an interview, from day 1, when we meet with somebody, we talk about our 5 values, and I make it very clear to people. We hire and we fire based on our values. Our values are very simple. Our customer's number 1. Our people are also number 1. Equally important. Right? So we pay slightly above average. We accommodate, the geography where they want to work. We have quite a few moms. Again, our industry is mostly women. So we have quite a few moms. We appreciate their family life. And if we can actually limit their travel, because travel in GTA is a disaster, then we give them more time to spend with their family. We do a lot for our employees to kind of, in our small, humble way, to accommodate them. So customer number one, people number one, our services are customized around our people. People need to be passionate about what we do, because we don't sell coffee. I love coffee. But the reality is this: we are dealing with frail people. And the fact that a shift ended at 3 or 5 and the next handoff didn't arrive yet, it doesn't mean you can leave. You can stay there. Because you can't leave that one person alone. Right? So passion is very important for what we do, because this is not a job, this is a commitment. Right? Making a difference is also one of our values. And I always tell our employees, you don't have to donate. But if your neighbor next door is senior, and it's a snowy day, and the newspaper's at the end of the driveway, and you go and pick up the paper and take it to the door, you made a difference. If you made a commitment to call somebody on a Friday for 15 minutes every Friday, because they have no other family here, stick to that and make sure you do it, because you're making a difference. So our values are very much integrated part of our brand. And when we learn that somebody's actually, we've had only one situation where I thought, somebody's actually doing this as a job, and it just wasn't the right fit. And we had to have to sit down and say, what, you're not happy here? Let me let you go be happy somewhere else. So, sorry, Frank.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask another question, if I could, because I know we're running out of time. When you don't get the business, you don't get that account or whatever, do you send thank you anyway? Will you let me know why I didn't get it so that I can have another shot at another time? Because that's something that I always did, is when I didn't get the business, whatever it was, I still thanked them. But sometimes they're able to share. Did you do that, Rick?
Yeah.
Or is that something?
So
we
you
didn't have the right stuff for the first round or whatever that was.
Yeah, so that's very good also. So we have, without boasting, we generally have a good closing ratio.
I mean more as in general versus iCare. I'm just talking in...
Generally speaking, you know what? There is nothing wrong with losing business. There's nothing wrong with failure. I always look at them as educational opportunities. And the reality is, we're not always going to win everything. Because sometimes you're selling something that people simply don't want to buy from you in your way. And you ever sell and drop your price so much, get the deal, and that becomes the biggest pain in the behind.
That's tax pain.
That, no, seriously, that 2 times we've discounted our prices turned out to be the worst customers we've had. And we actually had to fire the customer at one point, say, this is not going to work out. Right? So it's good sometimes to let things go, and if this is going to happen, or if they let you go from before, it's good to have that post-mortem and say, hey, listen, that didn't work out, and respect your opinion, can you tell me why? And sometimes the why is like, okay, well, that would not have been a good fit. Go ahead.
First of all, I enjoyed your presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Very inspiring. How do you get inspired?
How do I get inspired?
What inspires you? What books do you read? What resources do you follow?
When I lived in England, I had a friend of mine, her name is Iris, she lives in Australia, and she always said, the thing about you is you're always switched on. I don't know what that meant at the time, but you know what, it's really the passion for what I do. I only had one job in my life that I hated. I was there for 1 year. I'm not going to mention the name of the company. It just wasn't the right fit for me, right? But whether I was in a business development role, it was, I call it the thrill of the kill, right? Whether I went coast to coast for Coke, or sold $85 million worth of Unix to a company called Onyx on the Long Valley and Eglinton. We didn't sell units in our company. I worked for it at the time, but I sold it anyway. And it's the passion. It is really the passion. And once you get on it, it's like fine wine. You savor it.
It doesn't
You don't
stop. It doesn't stop. At the cottage, you'll go on about sales, and so you get it. So I think you get it.
Yes, sir.
You talked about when you go out through the state. What are some techniques that you use for relationship selling or relationship building?
So this is great, right? The first thing with relationship selling is be interested in the other person. We're too busy telling people about ourselves. We're all type A personnel, or most salespeople are type A, and we all have good stories. I love talking about my time in Europe. I love talking about cars, etc. I enjoy a good fine Cuban cigar. But the other person on the other side, they got stories too. So the first thing we do in relationship selling is take interest in the other person. Understand. I remember taking a course a long time ago, and one of the things I do is when I go in somebody's office, now of course I don't think about it, it's just second nature to me, is to kind of observe the office and see what is the office made out of? Are there family pictures or not? What kind of equipment are they using? Is it Dell or Apple? Nothing wrong with either one, just, what does that person look like in terms of what he's wearing? And I don't think twice about this stuff. The stuff now is like second nature, right? Understand the person in front of you. If the person in front of you looks like, they're a frugal person, and they're really careful with how they spend the money in their organization. Well, you better not talk in a way that scares them off, that, you hear suddenly a Rolls Royce or a Mercedes, and I'm going to be nice to you until you leave, because I'm not going to buy from you, right? So relationship selling, understand the other person, have their best interest in mind, right? I've never sold because I wanted to win. Never. It was always really about a win-win. And it was always about making the other person win first. And I always said, when the other person wins, I win by default. I don't have to worry about that. When I make the other person win, when I was doing deals with a couple of companies, big companies, no name mentioned, I understood the stakes for the person I was dealing with on the other side. I understood where they fit in the organization, what our conversation meant for them in terms of their career. And I had to make sure they win. Because when they won, they made sure I won. They didn't backstab me. Right? And you build also everlasting relationships. When people trust you, they trust like you've got their better interest in mind, they're going to stick to you. Why take a chance on anybody else? This is a bit of European selling, because if you look at Europeans will deal with the same organization forever. Go try to sell something Dolce & Gabbana or Chanel in France or whatever in Italy. Most of these businesses are families, and they dealt with other families forever, whether it came to fabric or designers or what have you. And if you understand these kind of mentalities, it's very hard to penetrate in these organizations. It's long-standing relationships. And I actually replicate this here. I actually built relationships. So most of the people I know, I still know them, even though we've changed environments. One of my business partners in a different environment was running Canadian Tire, Dealer Association. And I remember walking in his office like 27 years ago. And I was like a little scrunchy little thing. And he's my business mentor today. And we partnered together. And I stopped selling stuff to Canadian Tire a long time ago. Years ago. And we have a solid friendship now. Just had lunch together. So understanding what makes the other person win. Understand the other person first. Listen to them. And you start building this budding relationship. And then watch it grow and watch you reap the fruit with the flowers. Any other questions? Good.
so much. It was very candid and I hope helpful for you. I always feel if I can learn something, which I did today, definitely following your purpose and living your passion makes it so much easier just to enjoy your job and enjoy your business and the environment that you're in. We have a draw. We just want to bring the box around. If you have a business card, we have a draw for Staples, a $50 gift card, and we'd love to be able to give that away to you. Thanks. Kristen was going to do it for you, Frank. I think Frank put the flyer on the table, just of the 8 other talks that are coming. And we mentioned that Sean Palmer is going to be in February, and then we have Louis Belcastro and the table back there in March. And so we're looking forward to having you both here. And it will be in this room for the next 8 months. We'll be here. Thank you to the town of Whitby. I appreciate the space.
Now that we know which place to go.
Now that you know where it is, right?